Yonex EZONE 98 Tour, Thor's Hammer. Whoa, boy, it is heavy. First, I need to say big thank you to Tennis Warehouse Europe team for sending me this demo. If you wanna try some rackets, head over to them. Use my discount code and make sure to save some money. Of course, it will also help my channel a lot, so thank you. Okay, so let's go back to the review, story time. Why I even wanted to try this racket? Well, most of the rackets now that are coming to the market are like 3 or 5 grams. Brands even lowered the balance point to 31.5 centimeters. In the past, we were also seeing a lot of 32.5 balance points. So yeah, frames are going lighter and more headlight with lower swing waves. Me, coming from a heavy racket, I have to customize it slightly, and I'm building my new preference almost, I feel like, with this new wave of rackets. My previous main racket was 320 grams, 31 centimeters balance point and 295 swing wave unstrung. Another funny thing is that whenever I customize this new wave of rackets to my old specs, something is not clicking. I've heard that the starting point from which you customize further to your specs might have an impact on overall feel and the wave distribution, which makes sense. So that's why I wanted to try the EZONE Tour, because it is already a heavy racket in stock form. Maybe not the best specs for my preference, because EZONE Tour is also head heavy. With this type of static wave and swing wave, I would probably appreciate a more headlight version, but yeah, it is totally different to what we can experience now on the market. And guys, let me tell you, customizing your frames can be a very deflating experience. I have a swing wave machine and I mentioned it already, I can flip the rackets like 100 times towards totally different directions. I feel like I am making 2 or even 4 different versions of one racket, just changing the swing wave or balance or static wave or everything in between. And yeah, these specs that are coming to the market, they enable to do everything, which for a perfectionist is a big problem. That's why I'm trying to set some rules for myself to know what I'm looking for. The easiest playtesting would be like, I try the racket in stock form, I try a racket with leather grip, I like it or not, and that's it. And then maybe if I like the racket, I can fine-tune it. That's maybe the one set of rule I'm approaching slightly, because I'm kind of tired of testing different setups all the time. So that's one story why I wanted to try the EZONE Tour. Specs, totally different to what we can experience on the market. And the second thing why I wanted to try the EZONE Tour is the different wave distribution to the regular EZONE. And by that I mean I hope to see a bit better spin potential with the EZONE Tour compared to the regular EZONE. EZONE in general hits more penetrating ball more through the court, but when you want to hit more up with higher arch above the net, it's a bit challenging. I've tried some different setups, string setups, tensions, still experimenting, so it's not over, but higher swing wave, higher balance point might help crush the ball, bend the string, and from bending the string get more spin potential. That's an interesting theory. Did it happen? Yes, I experienced a heavier ball. The launch angle was still low, so it's not like I became a spin monster with the EZONE Tour. You still feel the DNA of the EZONE line. Does it feel heavy? Yes and no. Surprisingly, it moves through the ball quite easily. It's maybe a bit harder to start the motion, but once you start the motion, the swing wave and balance point take over, so it's a bit easier to accelerate at the contact point through the ball while headlight setups are kind of there waiting for you to continue something. It's your job to do the motion. Heavier swing waves and balance points, they take over, which might help you relax your swings a little bit. It really depends on your swing style and what you want to feel before on contact and after the contact. That's a very interesting subject that I'm kind of studying. So again, compared to the regular EZONE, harder to start the motion, easier to crash through the ball, the racket takes over, and from this point on the contact point, it is a bit easier to do something exciting with the ball. You get a lot of power, but the overall DNA of the racket's line is very predictable. Like, I didn't experience any issues with predictability. I mentioned that power frames tend to be sensitive, and yeah, if you mistime the contact point, it will fly on you, but it was kinda result that you could expect from mistiming the ball. For example, when you play with a spinny racket like Vicor, you feel like you do everything correctly and still the ball sails on you sometimes. That's the nature of a spinny racket. Power rackets tend to be very predictable in launch angle. So if you time it right, you still feel a lot of control. I did try to add some mass to the handle to make it more whippy, but to be honest, it didn't help much. Like, it was just starting to be too much. Maybe there are some thresholds, like 3 grams is not enough to experience a difference, and when you pass it with 5 grams, it suddenly becomes better. That's my curse of just experimenting with wave, balance point, whatever. Yeah, I felt like initial experience was not positive, so I didn't want to push it any further. I would just play with it in stock form and without the dampener, because yeah, dampener just made the swing wave a bit too much. One thing that I noticed with the EZONE Tour compared to the regular EZONE or other rackets with lighter specs is it was easier to hit from higher contact point, like crash the ball more down. The balance point was just closing the angle and the racket faster. So it might be a good solution versus moonballers. But for example, compared to the regular EZONE, of course, it was slightly harder on reaction shots. Counterattacks, maybe, depends. It was definitely a bit harder to flip the wrist and kick up the ball. It was much easier to just stay low, hit through the ball and hit low above the net. It was more natural with the EZONE Tour. Much harder to play a loopy shot. I believe it's just a matter of wave distribution. High swing wave, high balance point. The wrist is not moving that much. It goes through the ball more than wanting to kick up. So in a way, it makes your swings more predictable, but you're less flexible with your movements. So if you play on hard courts, it could be a great racket. On clay, might be a challenging one. Because on clay, you have different type of bounces. You have to change your motion during your swing. Sometimes it's just problem solving on clay. EZONE Tour, once you start it, it will finish. It might be a challenge if you want to switch off the autopilot and manually guide the racket. I think that can become a very physical struggle. With the EZONE Tour, you want to cooperate. You want to let it do its job. So the big question, do I like it more than the regular EZONE? In general, I believe more in the regular EZONE. Like, I want to try taking some of the positives from the EZONE Tour and put it into the regular EZONE, find this middle ground between the one and the other. Make the EZONE slightly more heavy, maybe heavier, but not as heavy as the Tour. Slightly higher swing wave, but not as high as with the EZONE Tour. So push it slightly towards the EZONE Tour, but keep it a bit lighter. So I can choose when I want to let the racket do its job and where I want to manually do some creative tennis, let's say, in that sense. Plus, I think EZONE Tour might tire you down. It doesn't feel heavy initially, but it can burn out your energy for sure. And you have to save energy, especially for clay courts. It doesn't feel very demanding, but for sure it is more demanding than all the other rackets on the market. Last thing is, I really enjoy looking at the EZONE. I don't know if it's just the bridge or the color or the shape, but it feels very refreshing. And holding the racket and the impact is very soft. A fun racket to play with. I'm not giving up on the EZONE line. I will customize the regular EZONE slightly. Let's be inspired with the EZONE Tour. Of course, all my EZONEs are already customized, but yeah, I will change the approach slightly. Maybe no leather grip and more focused mass lead tape to keep the static wave a bit lower than with the leather grip and bring up the swing wave. Stock EZONE 98 can have some issues with stability. The EZONE Tour is a tank, but it comes with a heavy spec. Guys, that's it for this review. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe, helps this channel a lot. If you wanna buy a racket from Tennis Warehouse Europe, make sure to use my affiliate link and use a discount code. See ya, guys.